Men today are not weak because of society. They are weak because they allow it. How many of you feel like life isn't going the way you planned? How many of you feel like you're constantly trying, yet getting nothing in return? If you're still blindly chasing things that bring no real value, it's time to stop. More and more men are choosing to live alone, not because they can't find someone, but because they've realized the game is no longer worth playing. Have you ever asked yourself, why? This video will break down why men are walking away from relationships, what they're seeking instead, and most importantly, whether you should do the same. If you want to truly take control of your life, watch until the end. If this is your first time visiting the channel, hit subscribe and like so you don't miss out on exciting upcoming content. Men today are not alone because they have no options. They live alone by choice. Some may call it avoiding responsibility, but the harsh reality is that modern relationships have become a gamble where men are getting far too little in return for what they're required to invest. In the past, dating and marriage offered real value to men, mutual support, a stable home, and motivation to grow together. Today, many men feel they are giving up too much, their time, money, and emotional energy, while receiving almost nothing in return. Rising divorce rates, biased legal systems when it comes to asset division, and the constant pressure to prove their worth have led many men to decide that the game is no longer worth playing. Men are not abandoning women. They are abandoning a system that no longer benefits them. Modern dating expectations, where men are still expected to be the financial provider, the pursuer, and the one who tolerates ever-increasing demands, have led many to ask, why am I doing this? And when the answer is, I have no good reason other than society telling me I should, they choose a different path. The reality is clear. The number of single men is rising, not because they can't find a partner, but because they no longer want to chase a game they cannot win. Instead of diving into risky relationships, these men are choosing to invest in themselves, in their personal growth, finances, and mental strength. Instead of seeking validation from women, they are learning to find value within themselves. The question is no longer, why are men choosing to live alone? The real question is, why shouldn't they? When the cost is too high and the reward is too low, the smartest choice is to walk away. And that is exactly what more and more men are doing. Relationships between men and women were once built on a foundation of fair exchange. Men provided protection, stability, and resources. Women contributed support, nurturing, and family cohesion. It was a reasonable balance where both genders had essential roles and relied on each other for survival. But everything has changed. Today, men feel like they constantly have to prove their worth, while women are no longer bound by the same obligations. With societal progress, women have more choices and less incentive to commit to long-term relationships. They no longer need men for financial security, nor do they feel pressured to start a family early. There's nothing wrong with this. Everyone has the right to pursue the life they want. But it also means that the motivation to engage in relationships is no longer the same. Many men are realizing that no matter what they do, it's never enough. They have to earn more money, be more chivalrous, be more patient, yet there's no guarantee that their efforts will be appreciated. Modern dating feels like an endless job interview where men are constantly performing while women simply choose. This imbalance has left many men exhausted and disinterested in participating. Rather than chasing unsustainable relationships, many men are choosing to invest in themselves. They focus on their careers, health, and personal interests instead of trying to please someone else. Not because they hate women, but because they've realized the game is no longer worth playing. This shift in relationship dynamics has created a wave of men choosing to live life on their own terms. They have abandoned unrealistic expectations and started seeking value from within. This is not surrender, it's evolution. Society tells you that you need a woman to feel complete. From a young age, you were taught that a man's happiness depends on having a family, a loving wife, and validation from others. But this is a lie. Stoicism doesn't care about external validation. It teaches you that your value doesn't come from whether someone loves you or not. It comes from your ability to control yourself. A truly strong man is one who can stand alone without being ruled by his emotions. He doesn't need anyone to feel whole. Look at the men who fall apart after a failed relationship. They lose motivation, they lose themselves, all because a woman left. Why? Because they placed too much of their worth in someone else's hands. They forgot that real happiness never comes from the outside. Stoicism teaches self-mastery, control over emotions, control over desires, and control over your own life. It doesn't tell you to hate women or avoid love. It teaches you not to depend on them. When you stop seeking validation from women, you become the kind of man they actually respect. Stoic men don't waste time trying to impress anyone. They focus on building inner strength, their intellect, their physique, their finances, and their mindset. They understand that if they become the best version of themselves, what they need will come naturally. Ask yourself, are you living for other people's approval, or are you living for yourself? If the answer isn't for myself, then you're living the wrong way. Self-mastery is the path to true strength. And that's why more and more men are choosing it instead of playing a game they can't control. Society hates men who don't play by its rules. If you're not chasing women, not getting trapped in risky relationships, and not placing your happiness in someone else's hands, you'll be labeled as the problem. People will tell you that a man who lives alone is a failure. That if you're not married, don't have kids, and don't fit the mold of the devoted husband, then you must be selfish, weird, or worse, useless. But look at the facts. Men who choose to live alone often have stronger finances, fewer problems, and more control over their lives. Why is a man who focuses on himself criticized? Because a free man cannot be manipulated. He isn't controlled by outdated social expectations or forced into responsibilities that don't serve his best interests. And that's exactly what society fears. The truth is, these men are not lonely. They're not bitter, they don't hate women, and they're not against love. They simply refuse to be trapped in a system that doesn't benefit them. They understand that peace of mind and personal stability are far more valuable than trying to please a world that always demands more while giving back so little. They're not running from responsibility. In fact, they're taking on the greatest responsibility of all, the responsibility for their own lives. So what do you want? To be part of a system that doesn't value you? Or to carve your own path? The choice is yours. Have you ever noticed that the most attractive men are never desperate for women? They don't beg, they don't chase, and they don't try to please anyone. They walk into a room and people naturally take notice. That's not magic. That's the power of self-mastery. A man who doesn't need women to feel whole is a dangerous man, in the best possible way. He isn't controlled by emotions, he isn't manipulated by the need for approval, and he doesn't compromise his values just to gain validation. Women are not attracted to desperation. They don't respect a man who is always trying to please them, always texting first, always bending over backward for a little attention. What they are drawn to is control. The man who stands strong on his own, the man who doesn't rely on anyone else for happiness. The truth is, you don't need a woman to be a man of value. You don't need anyone to complete you. If you believe that a relationship will make you happy, you're putting your life in someone else's hands. And that is the fastest way to lose yourself. Instead of chasing women, focus on becoming the man they want to chase. Invest in yourself, your health, your career, your mind. When you stop needing them, they will naturally be drawn to you. That's how nature works. Want to be respected? Learn to stand alone. Want to have options? Become the man women can't ignore. But above all, remember this: you don't need them to feel complete. You are already enough. Here's a truth no one dares to tell you. The more you crave validation from women, the less you will get it. The harder you try to please them, the more you lose value in their eyes. Society has programmed men to believe that they must chase, prove themselves, and do everything to win a woman's attention. But when you place your value in their hands, you become nothing more than a pawn in their game. You become easy to manipulate, easy to control, and worst of all, easy to discard. You've seen men who are willing to do anything for a woman, right? They spoil her, text her nonstop, buy her gifts, bend over backward just to make her happy. And what happens? She gets bored. She leaves to find a man who doesn't need her. This is not a coincidence. Women are not attracted to submission. They are drawn to independence. A strong man does not need anyone to validate his worth. He knows who he is, he knows what he wants, and he does not change himself just to be accepted. When you stop seeking validation from women, you take back control. You are no longer ruled by their emotions, no longer worried about whether they like you or not. You live on your own terms, not according to their expectations. And here's the most interesting part. When you no longer need their approval, they start chasing you. When you focus on your own growth instead of trying to please them, they respect you more. The lesson here is simple. If you have to work for acceptance, you've already lost. If you know your worth and need no one to confirm it, you've already won. Here's a truth no one wants to admit. Living alone is not failure, it's a strategy. A man who lives alone is not lonely, he is prioritizing himself. Without the constraints of a relationship, a man can fully focus on his career, his physical health, his financial stability, and his mental strength. No emotional games dragging him down. No distractions pulling him away from his long-term goals. Instead of constantly worrying about pleasing someone else, he can invest all his time and energy into becoming the best version of himself. Look around. How many men are stuck in relationships that drain them? They are exhausted from pointless arguments, from unrealistic expectations, from constantly proving themselves yet never receiving respect in return. Men who choose to live alone aren't incapable of love. They just understand that unless a relationship truly adds value, it's better not to play the game at all. Living alone also builds discipline. When you have no one to lean on, you're forced to stand tall on your own. You learn to control your emotions, handle challenges, and take full ownership of your life, without relying on external validation. And when you reach that level, you become a truly strong man. One who is not ruled by fleeting emotions or social pressure. The real question isn't, why are men choosing to live alone? The real question is, why shouldn't they? If a choice makes you stronger, freer, and more in control of your life, then it's not failure. It's power. Living alone doesn't mean men fear relationships or can't find love. It's a deliberate decision, a strategy that allows them to focus on what truly matters. Men who understand the value of solitude don't see it as a burden. They see it as a tool for self-mastery. Society teaches men that they're only successful if they have a relationship, get married, and become the foundation of a family. But that's a psychological trap. The reality? Many men are stuck in toxic relationships where they constantly have to prove their worth, yet never receive respect in return. They drain their time, energy, and mental well-being just to hold on to something that isn't worth holding. On the other hand, men who choose to live alone can dedicate their full attention to career, health, finances, and mental growth, without being distracted by the endless emotional games of modern relationships. True solitude isn't isolation, it's selective engagement. A smart man doesn't reject relationships, but he doesn't enter them blindly either. He understands that not every relationship is valuable, and not every person is worth investing time and emotions into. So instead of chasing validation from others, he seeks growth from within. Look at the most powerful and successful men. Are they obsessed with having someone by their side? No. They understand that if a relationship doesn't make them better, it's not worth having. They use solitude to build discipline, to construct a life they control, instead of being controlled by emotions. Solitude is not emptiness, it's an opportunity. When a man can stand strong on his own, he becomes untouchable. He makes decisions based on logic, not emotions. He doesn't let society, women, or anyone else define his worth. And when he reaches that state, he is truly free. A truly strong man isn't the one constantly surrounded by people, women, or praise. True power comes from the ability to stand alone without breaking. Stoicism teaches that happiness doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal control. The less a man is influenced by outside forces, the stronger he becomes. We live in an era where men are constantly pressured by meaningless social expectations. They are taught to prioritize other people's emotions, to please women, to chase after standards they never agreed to. But Stoic philosophy says the opposite. Don't waste energy on things outside your control. Instead of trying to satisfy the world, train yourself to not need the world's approval. Detachment isn't isolation, it's control. A Stoic man doesn't let emotions dictate his actions. He doesn't rely on others for happiness because he knows true fulfillment comes from within. He isn't shaken by criticism or society's expectations because he understands his worth isn't determined by external forces. Why does this mindset matter? Because the world doesn't care about your weakness. If you rely on women to feel complete, if you need others' validation to feel valuable, you will always be controlled. You will live in fear, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. And when you live in fear, you cannot be strong. A Stoic man doesn't suppress emotions, but he controls them. He doesn't let others manipulate his mindset, nor does he allow external factors to dictate his sense of self-worth. He acts based on logic, not the need to be accepted. Here's a truth most people won't admit. You don't need anyone. Not because you don't want companionship, but because you are strong enough to not rely on others to feel valuable. When you reach that level, you are no longer a pawn in someone else's game. You become the one who sets the rules. No one is coming to save you, except yourself. Society will continue to push you into meaningless molds. Women will keep raising their expectations, and if you keep chasing external validation, you will always be weak. Living alone is not failure. It's an opportunity to build yourself without distractions. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell you to avoid relationships. It teaches you to never let them control your life. A strong man does not fear solitude, does not seek approval, and does not let emotions dictate his decisions. Your happiness is not in the hands of women, family, or society. It lies in your ability to have absolute control over your own life. You can continue being a passive player, or you can rise and take control of your own destiny. The choice is yours. And if you are truly strong, you already know the answer. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.